Welcome to the next episode of Proactive Magazine Show. This is an interview for the Proactive Magazine with Preston Ni. Preston, you are a coach in some very, very interesting areas of personal and business success and also happiness. So could you, invite our readers and tell us more about yourself?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I'm Preston Ni, and my primary career is a professor of communication studies, and I teach at Foothill College. We're in the Silicon Valley, just south of San Francisco. So we're next to Apple and Google and Stanford. I work with a lot of technical, high-tech professionals and business professionals on improving their communication skills. Specifically, I help people with leadership communication, cross-cultural communication, negotiation skills, emotional intelligence skills. So it's a very interesting career where I can help people become more effective, or as your magazine will put it, much more productive.
Right.
Not just as professionals, but as human beings.
So so let's jump right to communication. What would you say are the biggest problems for people to communicate? What are the things that people just the obstacles that people create to really impede good communication?
Right, that's a very, very good question. I think in my experience working with many students and professionals, two of the most common problems people have that prevents them from being as successful as they can be in communication are these. Number one, some people are very good. I'm talking about work now. Some
Right.
people are very good in problem solving, but they're not very good with their people skills.
Okay.
Others may be very good with people skills. They're very popular. They're very likable, but they're not very strong or assertive in their problem solving skills. So one of the most common problems I see in communication is that people lack the ability to be both, because problem solving is generally more left brain oriented.
Okay.
People skills are more right brain, and most of us are either more left brain or more right brain. And unless you take, say, communication courses, like
Right.
the ones that I teach at the college, you don't really develop a real strong balance between the two, so that you can be very diplomatic and professional with people, to have good people skills with them, and be strong in your problem solving ability at the same time. So that's a common problem. A second problem that I see often is the lack of recognition as far as the type of personality you may be communicating with. When we negotiate, when we talk with our managers or customers or colleagues, depending on their personality, someone who's more analytical may require a different type of communication than
Right.
someone very entrepreneurial or creative. So knowing the type of personality you're dealing with can be very helpful, because that means you also know what type of communication skills can motivate them, can get their attention, can get their cooperation. And these are very simple communication skills we can learn once we understand how different personalities communicate differently.
Yes, totally. I mean, this part, especially when I was reading some articles about. I mean, one of your articles and some articles about negotiation was the thing that to really when you do a pitch or a presentation, you should try to attack from different angles and see how the person responds, and then by seeing the
Exactly.
response, right, you could get them a little bit,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, in presentation as well as uh, in negotiations.
Hmm.
One of the first rules is you have to understand your audience
Right.
and know where they're coming from, so that you can figure out ways to communicate for you to relate to them and for them to be able to relate to you. Just because you have a brilliant idea doesn't mean that other people see what you see,
Exactly.
or feel as passionate as you do. So you want to find the right type of communication to get across to them, so that they understand what your vision is, so they can identify ways to work with you and share your passion.
Exactly. So, I mean, for me, for example, one of my main, not problems, but challenges is that my company, for example, we are 20 people and growing, but we are all remote. We are all remotely. We work from homes. So the thing is that, I mean, what would you say? What would you say would help us to really communicate very well? Because we don't see, we don't see each other that much. We communicate either through text or through audio, mostly. Sometimes only through video. So how do you think how should we develop the communication to make sure that we really, get our points across?
Okay, that's another very good question. I would recommend three things. First of all, I think because everyone works remotely in your organization, good preparation ahead of
Hmm.
meetings, ahead of discussions is vital. Good preparation means that as the leader, you want to clearly articulate the context for the meeting. What
Okay.
is the context? What are the objectives? And what are the outcomes? And also maybe what are the guidelines?
All
A
right.
guideline
Mhm.
can be as simple as I know we disagree on this, but let's make sure we get through all of our points today. And if there are a lot of discussions about one particular disagreement, we can take that offline.
All
So
right.
as a leader, you prepare your group, your team for
Hmm.
what to expect over the next
Okay.
20, 30 minutes of the meeting.
Hmm.
And then I recommend that as often as possible, discussions should be done person to person by phone or by video conferencing. Discussions, deliberations, it's better to go over them with live with another human being rather than in writing. Now, the preparation part should be done in writing.
Right.
You outline what you want to accomplish before the meeting, and then the meeting should be as human as possible.
Okay.
And then afterwards, you follow up in writing what you have accomplished, and then you
Hmm.
talk about the next step.
Yeah, it's very, very cool. Especially it comes very nice in line with the concept of, what's the next action after we've already discussed the thing. So, like in getting things done, you have to just find what's the next action step after a discussion or
Exactly.
conversation.
Right. And these three steps are consistent with what I talked about before about communication skills. You're soft on the person because you're maintaining the personal connections while you're being very organized and firm with problem solving, which is the part that you do in writing. So you accomplish both. You maintain the team connection between
Hmm.
people while being very proactive in your problem solving.
I think this is actually what gets people confused and what is very very hard for people to distinguish. What you wrote in one of the articles that to distinguish the person from the from the issue. To don't attack the person, attack the issue, right?
Exactly.
What would be the easiest exercises to make sure that you're not doing the wrong thing?
Okay. There's a very easy exercise that I often recommend to my students when they have to say something critical or
Hmm.
when they have to say something that's not so positive, and that is it's called the sandwich method in the United States.
Right.
In the United States, even police officers, and I have police officers in my class sometimes. They take my class while they're cadets, and they learn how to deal with people um, to lower their resistance. So the
Hmm.
sandwich method is before you say something critical or something that's tough, you start with something positive.
Hmm.
Uh, for example, even if it's not positive, you say something that's neutral at least. You don't start with something negative. So you can say, for example, I want to talk with you today because I'm curious about the progress of your project.
Hmm.
So that's pretty neutral.
Right.
But that sets uh, that sets a context that's more constructive. And then you talk about your concerns. And when you talk about the concerns, avoid you language. Avoid saying things that you need to do this better. You have to be on time. You have to meet the qualifications. You language is like pointing fingers at people. And I know people in the U.S., people in Europe, most places around the world use you language, but it makes people defensive. When people
Right.
hear you have to do this, you have to do that, that's exactly right. They put up a wall.
Hmm.
Even if they don't show it psychologically, they're resisting because they're thinking about protecting themselves rather than cooperating with you. So instead of saying you want to say I or it.
Hmm.
It's very important that we look into this. You can say this has to be looked at because I think if we don't look at it, there are gonna be negative consequences we don't like. You can say the same thing but avoid you and instead use I, it, we, let's,
Hmm.
this, and then you end with something positive. So I'm glad we talked about this today. Let me check in with you next week to see how the progress is coming along. So the sandwich method, you start with something positive, and then you solve the problem in the middle, and you can be very direct with problem solving as long as you use diplomatic language
Right.
that
Hmm.
doesn't that doesn't trigger people to be so defensive
Hmm.
and argumentative, and then you end with something constructive.
So talking about, yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's, especially I like the advice about avoiding you language because, as you said, this turns people away and creates this wall. So, like in my communication, I am a very optimistic person. So, like in my team, I'm very happy. I'm always saying, we're gonna do this. I mean, and I'm always very optimistic. And sometimes people are afraid that I'm gonna say something very, very, very optimistic. I'm gonna say something really, and then I'm gonna say something bad.
Right.
So like, but anyway, even if you have problems, I mean, so people have been sometimes saying that even like when we have problems, I should describe the problems more, just like you said, more, just don't describe the people who are doing this, but describe the problems that we have, because they say that with my optimism, they feel like I'm making issues small because I'm so optimistic about the future anyway. Like, but I don't know. I think it's better to be more optimistic than just be, catastrophic about stuff. What do you think?
Yes, I'm the same way. We just talked about personalities, right? And you and I think, have similar personalities in that some people are more future oriented
Right.
and more optimistic, and I think we're both like that. And while others are more detail oriented and relying on past evidence, so on and so forth. So I think in this case, in my view, being an entrepreneur, being someone who's more future oriented, there's nothing wrong with being optimistic. I would only add that it's important to combine optimism with having your feet on the ground.
Right.
So feet on the ground in this case means a realistic assessment of any difficulties or challenges and threats. Be honest about existing challenges, existing difficulties, or future difficulties that may come. But as optimists, we don't have to dwell only on the negatives. If there's a problem, we can talk about the problem and then shift to, okay, we have this problem. What are some solutions? As a leader, you can propose a number of solutions, or you can invite your team to contribute solutions to you.
Exactly.
So that once the problem is identified, we don't just dwell on the negatives. We look at, okay, what can we do about it? And the problem solving process can be very optimistic and positive, as long as it's still grounded in results, in the results that we want to attain.
Yeah. Okay, so let's now shift. I mean, we're talking about my team. Let's shift back to the productivity. I mean, your productivity, because we are a proactive magazine. So, we've learned a lot about you and about your ideas, which are very, as you said, very productive in the future. But tell me, what do you do to keep yourself productive? Because you're running so many things. You have the books, which we'll link to, and you have you're being asked, you're being interviewed by some people all the time. Plus, you have the school, and so tell me, how do you get everything done?
Okay, that's a great question. I use a very simple time management system every day, and it helps me be very, very productive, which is the theme of your magazine. And I've been using this system for 25 years now.
Wow.
What I do every day, I wake up in the morning, I make a list. Let me show you what I have a class after my interview with you. I'm teaching a class.
All right.
So this is an example of what I'm doing. So I have a list of what I want to accomplish. Sometimes and I normally don't use a pad, but this is for class. I'm using a pad. I put down on a sheet of paper a list of everything I want to accomplish today. So it's a bullet point list, and it can be 10 items, it can be 20 items, and sometimes it's a lot. And then I try to prioritize the list by identifying next to each bullet point either A, B, or C. The A items are the most important items. I have to do these today. The B items are the things that I should do. But if I don't do it today, I can probably move it, tomorrow. The C items are not that important. I can skip it. I can just cancel it or maybe wait until next week. And then I focus on accomplishing the A list and the B list. Sometimes I even subdivide the A's and the B's so that I have A1, A2, B1, and B2. So with this system, I'm focusing not on getting a lot done, but just the most important tasks. And there's this theory called, you probably know about this theory, 80-20 theory,
Right.
which says that, yeah, 80% of the importance of what we accomplish every day are only in 20% of the activities. So if you have a list of 10 things to do, but you only do the top two that are the most important, even if you skip the next eight, you feel like you've had a very productive day because the
Right.
most important things are done. So that's what I do. I do have a schedule book that
Mm-hmm.
that I use for the listing, and every day the things that I don't accomplish that are less important, I transfer to the
Okay.
next day or the next week. So maybe something that's on my B list today, by tomorrow it'll become an A list item because tomorrow there's more urgency. But by focusing on by clearly listing what I want to accomplish and then prioritizing and then focusing on accomplishing only the top priorities, I feel like I'm getting a lot done most of the time. And this also gives me a lot of free time because after I do my A list, if I want to relax and recharge my batteries, I feel like I can do it because the rest of the list are not as urgent, and I can afford to give myself some time to rejuvenate. So if I need to be more creative in the afternoon, I allow myself that leisure. And by being organized with my time, we actually have more free time as well as productive time.
Yeah, I think what you say here is really important, and it's always worth repeating to people. This Pareto rule of 80-20, in the sense of really having these, some people call it three rocks or three, big important tasks. I mean, these, identifying these A tasks as you call them to really get them done first, and then everything else, as you said, after this, you've already had a great day. So everything else is a bonus, right? Rather than thinking, I have 10 things and I have to do each of them, and then being really hard about themselves of not doing them properly, right?
Right. Being busy is not the same as being productive. A lot of productive people have a lot of free time and they are extremely productive.
Exactly, exactly. So I assume that you're also not a perfectionist because I know that the perfectionism can really be a problem when you try to get things done, right?
Right. Well, I'm not a perfectionist, and I try not to be a perfectionist. There's some minor exceptions, but for the most part, I've done some studies
Mm-hmm.
into perfectionism, and there's an abundance of research that tell us that perfectionists tend to tend to suffer more from depression.
Right.
They tend to have lower self-esteem because they're constantly worried about making mistakes. They're constantly worried about not being good enough. They're constantly worried about what other people think of them. And if they're not perfect, which none of us are, if they're not perfect, they're constantly worried and stressed out. So I try not to be perfect because there's no winning to being perfect. What I try to do is to follow the Steve Jobs model, which is to have a standard of excellence.
Okay.
So the big difference between perfectionists and those who strive for excellence are these. Perfectionists are definitely afraid of making mistakes. They're terrified of mistakes. And sometimes, in order to be perfect, they don't move forward because they don't want to make mistakes. They don't feel like they're ready. And it's very counterproductive that
Exactly.
way
Exactly.
because you put a lot of stress on yourself and you also prevent yourself from being innovative because of the fear of failure. Now, people who have high standards, who are also very innovative, they're not afraid to make mistakes. In fact, to paraphrase Steve Jobs, he reminds us that when we innovate, oftentimes we realize that we made mistakes, but that's okay as long as you learn from your mistakes and adjust along the way. Sometimes the mistakes are your most important teachers because the mistakes can tell you how you can be excellent at what you do. If you put out a product and you get a lot of negative customer feedback, you can either feel very badly about it, or you can adapt very quickly to the feedback and improve your product so that your product can be better and better each step of the way. That's how many entrepreneurs refine their product. Not because it's perfect the first time. In most cases, it's not.
No.
But they have an excellent product because they continuously make improvements on them. And as individuals, as innovators and professionals, we can see our careers that way. as
Hmm.
well. It's okay to have to make mistakes as long as you learn from it. It's okay to have criticisms um, because criticisms can often help you think about things in a way that you did not think of before. I'll give you a quick example. 2 years ago, I gave a presentation,
Hmm.
and somebody asked me a question that I was not prepared to answer. And so I did give an answer, but afterwards I thought, that's a really good question that I was asked. Maybe I should look into this a little bit. The question had to do with how to deal with a particular type of difficult dynamic in
Hmm.
leadership. So I looked into it, and eventually I published a book about it. Um, and the book, to my surprise, is one of my bestsellers. I
You
sell
see?
this book on how to deal with difficult leaders than many other books. So I have to thank that person who asked me the difficult question 2 years ago. If I became negative about that question, and I stopped talking about that topic, I would not have this best-selling book today. So I thank the person who challenged me, because that challenge made me into a better professional with this book that's helping people. So perfectionists are often afraid of making mistakes or looking bad. I'm not afraid of making mistakes. I'm not afraid of looking bad, as long as I can learn from them to be better the next time around.
No, exactly. I mean, this is so important, especially, for example, in my case, because we have the software Nozbe for project management, and when we get feedback from customers, very often it's angry feedback, but
Mm-hmm.
it's angry because they really care. So I,
Yeah.
I I never take it personally. I always take it constructively because somebody really cares. They are so angry with me. It means they really want it better, right?
And the minute they're not angry, they stop caring and they're not going to buy your product anymore.
Exactly, exactly. So I always tell my team to really appreciate angry feedback. It's hard because you think it's bad for you, but no, it's actually the contrary. But I wanted to just finish up the interview, wrap up with something that you just said about self-esteem. So the thing is that I have some people on my team that have quite low self-esteem at times, and it's how to what to do with people who have low self-esteem, but they're really good. How to help them get out of this funk and move them forward.
Okay, that's another very good question. I think that there are many ways to look at how to increase self-esteem. Let me just take one approach.
Hmm.
Um, I think for most of us to feel good about ourselves, who we are and what we do in the world, there are a number of factors that are essential. One is to have a sense of purpose and
Okay.
meaning in life. And again, this relates to the personality theory that I talked about earlier. Some people, their purpose in life is to help people, and in your company, those could be the customer service professionals.
Right.
Those could be the negotiators, the trainers. Others, they enjoy solving problems. Those can be the technical people. Others still, they enjoy creating new things. Those can be the entrepreneurs, the product innovators, the future thinkers. And then some people like to build things, to be more in control, and those can be the managers. When you find what makes you passionate about your work, what makes you passionate about your life, you naturally feel healthier and stronger about who you are as a person, because there's purpose and there's meaning in your life. So I
Hmm.
think that's one piece to self-esteem. Another piece would be having healthy relationships in your life. Healthy relationships, like beginning with your family, your significant other, your partner, your children, your family, and then having good relationships at work. Having effective communication skills, of course, can help us achieve better communications. So if you have people in your life whom you feel good about, who are there to support you at home or at work, I think that's also a good source of self-esteem. The third factor is to take good care of yourself. Some people, they work so hard, they're so stressed, they forget to eat right, they forget to exercise. And we know that when you don't feel good physically, you don't feel good about yourself either. So make sure you take good care of yourself. Make sure you take good care of your body. And when you have passion and meaning in life, when you have good relationships, when you feel pretty healthy as a person, I think success follows you when you have those types of qualities in your life. Because no matter what you do it with energy, you do it with passion. People want you to join them. for their projects, for their activities, and success will follow you because you are a good role model how to live your life in a very productive and meaningful way. So that's one approach to increasing self-esteem.
And I think it's a perfect way to, to finish this interview. And we'll link to your books, to your website, and to everything about Preston below the video, and of course in the Proactive magazine, where you will also get the transcript of the whole interview with all the links and everything else. So Preston, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for having us here with the Proactive magazine.
You're very, very welcome. And if your readers would like to contact me, they're welcome to visit my website and email me. I'll be happy to answer any questions they have. So thank you for having me on your program.
Thanks, Preston.